Hello, I'm Pamela Powers with the Office of Standards, Assessment, and Accountability. This session covers how to calculate the growth indicator for Kentucky's accountability system. The regulation covering the accountability system was finalized May 31, 2019. 703 KAR 5:270 details the 6 indicators that create Kentucky's accountability system. Those indicators are proficiency in reading and math, separate academic for science, social studies, and writing, growth in reading and math, including English learners' progress towards language proficiency, quality of school climate and safety, transition readiness at high school, and graduation rate or cohort graduation rate at high school. When I see this graphic, my first thought is, how are we going to bring these indicators together to tell me more about my school? Well, the regulation pulled the indicators together and gave weights for each to allow an overall score to be generated. This table shows the weights for each grade level. Grade levels are typically elementary, grades 3 through 5, middle, grades 6 through 8, and high school, grades 9 through 12, though some individual schools may differ. In this session, we are going to concentrate on growth, which is reported at the elementary and middle school levels, and is 35% of the overall score for those levels. If one of the indicators is missing, then the weights will be distributed to the remaining indicators. Kentucky also had to submit a plan for ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act. This plan was originally signed in December 2015, but has had changes submitted based upon our final accountability regulation, 703 KAR 5:270. The growth portion of the ESSA plan continues to use the K-Prep reading and math assessments in grades 3 through 8 to calculate growth for grades 4 through 8. Growth is reported only at the elementary and middle school levels. The WIDA Access for ELS exam is used to show growth toward language proficiency for English learners. Language proficiency growth is included in the reading portion of the growth indicator. We will look more closely at this in a moment. The original ESSA plan submitted showed growth as a projection. Stakeholders decided after the 2017-18 results released that this needed to change. After several intense and productive meetings, growth was changed from a projection to actual student growth. The growth tables and the definition in the regulation were updated to reflect this change. To more accurately reflect student growth, it was decided that the novice and apprentice performance levels should be subdivided into high and low levels. This changed the performance levels from 4 NAPD, or Novice, Apprentice, Proficient, and Distinguished, to Novice Low, Novice High, Apprentice Low, Apprentice High, Proficient, and Distinguished. It was further decided that a student who maintained the same performance level in the next grade was showing growth, since the content area rigor increases each year. Let's look at the growth value table from the regulation. Sometimes seeing a chart with values makes everything clearer. Here is the growth value table from the regulation, which applies to reading and math. Reading last year's student performance level from the first column and follow across to this year's student performance level to receive points. Notice there are no negative numbers. If a student did not show growth, then a 0 is received. If a student maintained the same performance level both years, then he or she receives 50 points. The exception is Novice Low, with no points received. The point scale runs from 0 to 300 in 50-point increments. Using this table, let's look at some examples which could apply to either reading or math. Here are the examples we will use to better understand the growth value table. On the next slide, we have created a table and marked each example on it. Please continue to the demonstration. Let's begin with Chris's example in red. Chris scored Apprentice Low last year. Go down the first column to Apprentice Low. This year, her score increased to Apprentice High. Go right across the row until you are in the Apprentice High column. Chris earned 100 points for her school. Looking at Marvin in the navy blue, we see that Marvin scored Proficient last year. This year, his score dropped to Apprentice High. Marvin earned 0 points for the school because he did not show growth from last year. Finally, let's look at Penny in purple. Penny scored Novice High last year. This year her score remained the same at Novice High. Penny earned 50 points for the school by maintaining her performance level with the increasing academic rigor. These examples show us how reading and math growth are calculated from the K-Prep assessments. There is one more part to growth, and that is incorporating English learners or EL students into the mix. The English Learner Growth Value Table shows growth on language proficiency between last year and this year on the WIDA Access for ELS assessment. A student exits from the program when 4.5 or higher composite score is achieved on the language assessment, which is why the previous year column scores end at 4.0. The year 2 or current year values range from 1.0 to 4.5. Notice that the English Learner Growth Value Table is just like the Growth Value Table, contains no negative numbers, and gives 50 points for a student who maintains the same level as last year. The point scale also goes from 0 to 300. I find that the easiest way to understand something new is to work through some examples. Let's take the examples off this slide and apply them to the English Learner Growth Value Table on the next slide. We will begin with Anita in red. Anita's composite score was 2.0 on the Access exam last year. This year her composite score was 3.1. Anita earned 150 points for the school. Moving on to Renee in green, Renee's composite score was 3.3 on the Access exam last year. This year he scored 3.1. Renee earned 50 points for maintaining a score in the 3.0 to 3.4 range. To move to the next level, a student must attain the minimum score. Scores are not rounded. Renee could have fallen to a 3.0 or risen to a 3.4 score, but he still would receive 50 points since his score remained within the range of 3.0 to 3.4. We've seen both value tables from the regulation. Now we need to do the calculations of growth for the school based on points received by each student. Let's start with the easiest calculation, math growth, which only uses the growth value table. According to 703 KAR 5:270, the school calculation for mathematics shall be the sum of the total points from the growth value table for all students divided by the total number of scores. That's a mouthful. I prefer to think of it as the total points earned divided by the number of student scores. Let's say we have 7 students, but one of the students didn't have a test last year. The student without a test will be exempted from the calculation, which means we really have 6 students in the calculation, though our school has 7 that tested this year. The points earned from our 6 students were 100, 0, 50, 150, 100, and 0. We then divide those 400 total points by 6 for the number of student scores. The school has a rounded gross score in mathematics of 66.7. We will combine the math growth with the reading growth to discover the school growth. Calculating reading growth is a bit more involved since we will use both the growth value table and the English Learners Growth Value Table in the equation. Let's try out this calculation. This is almost like the math growth calculation, except in the numerator. We are adding the points for EL students, and in the denominator adding the number of EL exams into the student scores. According to our calculation, we take the sum of the total points from the growth value table for all students and add the growth points for English proficiency for EL students and divide that number by the total number of student scores. The total number of student scores will include the number of English proficiency tests as well. Okay, now I really do need an example with numbers for this one. If we continue with our example from math growth, we have 6 students that tested in reading. Remember, K-Prep tests reading and math in grades 3 through 8. If a student has a math test, he or she will also have a reading test. A student cannot be excluded or exempted from only one content area. It's all or nothing. The 6 students earned these points from the growth value table for reading: 50, 0, 100, 100, 0, and 200. Of these students, 3 are English Learner or EL students. They also took the WIDA Access for ELS exam. Using the growth value table, the students earned 150, 50, and 0 points. When we add both point sets together, we have 450 plus 200 for 650 points. Let's move on to the denominator. The total number of students' scores has to include both the K-Prep test and the Access for ELS test. In our example, we have 6 students with K-Prep reading scores and 3 students with Access for ELS scores for a total of 9 student scores. Our final calculation is 450 plus 200 divided by 9 equals a rounded value of 72.2. We have done all of the heavy lifting by reading the value tables and calculating the math and reading and the EL growth. Now it's time for the final calculations of overall school growth. Gee, looks like an average to me. Add the reading and math growth scores together, then divide by 2. This is easier than you thought it was going to be, isn't it? Using our previous calculations, let's do this. Our reading growth score was 72.2 and our math growth score was 66.7. When we add those together, we get 138.9. Let's divide by 2. Our overall school growth score is 69.5, rounded to 1 decimal place. Now you have it. You too can calculate growth for your school. There is one step left to calculate the weight that the overall growth score has in the accountability model. If you remember the overall accountability weights chart on slide 3, it showed that growth is 35% of the overall score used in the star rating. To calculate this final score, we will use the overall growth score result and use the weight from the chart. Please note that weights may change from year to year based upon which indicators are in use. For the 2018-2019 results, the weights from the quality of school climate and safety will be redistributed to the other indicators. For our example, we will use the 35% from the table. We take our overall growth score and multiply it by 35% or 0.35. This results in 24.3 for the growth portion of overall accountability for elementary and middle schools. There will be additional information concerning how to calculate this and the other indicators for the overall accountability numbers shared before the public release of data. This concludes our module on growth. If you have further questions, please do not hesitate to contact us in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support by email at kdedacinformation or dacinfo@education.ky.gov or call us at 502-564-4394. Every indicator in the accountability system has a web page and a training associated with it, so please visit each to learn more about Kentucky's accountability system. Thanks for listening.